Hey there, welcome to the Compared to Who show. I'm Heather Creekmore, and I'm so glad that you are watching today. And I'm so glad that you're listening today. If you're just listening on the podcast, today my guest is Shawna Scafe, and she's a podcaster and a coach and all the things, like I said in my introduction. And today I have invited her on the show to talk about something that I feel like so many of the women I talk to, work with, myself included, struggle with. And that is this all or nothing mentality. So, Shawna, welcome to the Compared to Who show.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's start by defining the terms.
Mhm.
All or nothing mentality. I think generally a lot of people know what that means, but for those listening or watching who haven't
Mhm.
actually used those words, I have an all or nothing
Yes.
mentality. What are we talking about there? What does that mean?
Yeah, all or nothing, it's a way of having our thoughts or thinking, and it's considered a cognitive distortion. So it's considered a thought that isn't necessarily true and not helping us. So
Mm.
there's about 15 different cognitive distortions, and all or nothing thinking, also called black and white thinking or polarized thinking, and it's thinking in these two extremes, like all or nothing, always or never. I have to or I can't. I'm all in, I'm all out. It's 100 or it's 0. And it really sets us up for this kind of it's perfect or it's a failure. Like if I didn't get 100% on that test, I failed. It's not leaving any room for what else is true. I often tell my clients it's looking at the 0 or 100, but never the 1 to 99.
Right,
So it
right.
really limits us for sure.
Yeah, I love that and I see that and I get that. So, what's your story? Why did you decide to start talking about and writing about all
Mhm.
of this all or nothing and perfectionism beyond that? Can you share a little
Mhm.
bit about you and how this was part of your story?
Yeah, I think what really led me to this was life coaching. And I had a previous career as a health inspector. I left it to be home with my kids. And over time, I just started doing different work online, blogging. I was working at my church part time, and they asked me to be trained as a coach. So I went through coach training and eventually came back to stay home with my kids again and just kept on coaching. And I usually coach moms through my own show, Simple on Purpose, and my blog, Simple on Purpose. I coach moms who want to live on purpose, who want to just slow down, simplify their lives, and just show up well for the life that they have, for the life in front of them. And all or nothing thinking is something that I have learned about as I've done coaching, as I've gone through coaching. And I thought about it more and more. I started sharing it on the podcast and different podcasts because it's something that's in all of the areas of our life. Almost every single coaching call I was having, I was running a weekly program. Almost every single call, we could spot it. Like we were spotting it together eventually. And the women were like, ah, it's all or nothing thinking. I hear it. I see it now. So it just shows up in every area of our life, from how we're approaching our budgets to exercise to relationships to parenting. It's just showing up this black or white thinking on
Mm.
how we think it has to be 100. And if it's not 100, then I didn't do it right. I'm not enough. I'm a
Yeah.
failure. And I think you, all of us have it in some parts of our lives for sure.
Yeah. Oh, so I love that. Okay. So what does it look like to have all or nothing thinking when it comes to like exercise, for example, or dieting, which I think I know where you're going to go
Right.
there. But what does that look like?
Yes. Yeah. And I experienced that too, and how I take care of my body, right? Well, I ate some crap today, so diet's off, right?
Right.
Because I'm not meeting 100% of what it should look like. Or all or nothing thinking with exercise is something that I used to struggle with because I never exercised. So when I was like, okay, I'm going to take care of my body, what does that look like? I thought it had to look like an hour of weightlifting and half hour of
Mm.
cardio, and like you go to the gym and you own this certain like stuff that you wear on your body, all
Right.
these things. I wasn't like, oh, I can do it in my pajamas in 15 minutes in my living room. I
Right.
definitely had all or nothing thinking. So it's setting us up to not even approach it sometimes. And it's also setting us up to not follow through on things if we're
Yeah.
not meeting it 100%.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm just thinking about how that has been something that just over the last several years, I've started to recognize just going back to exercise. I mean, I think, the dieting thing, like
Mhm.
that's just such a a stereotypical joke almost, right? Like, well, I blew it
Right,
today,
yes.
so the diet's over.
Yeah,
So
diet's off, yeah.
I'll start again on Monday or New
Yeah.
Year's or whenever I need to wear a swimsuit or
Yes.
whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of the joke, right? But with exercise, like I think that's an interesting place. I didn't even know we would go today. But I've totally seen that how it's like if I can't clock an hour at the gym or if I can't clock a full
Mhm.
45 minutes at the gym, then I just
Yes.
can't exercise today.
Yeah.
And I have just personally started to be like, okay, I have 10 minutes. I can walk around my
Yeah.
block for 10 minutes. It's only 10 minutes. I didn't have the full half hour that I would like to walk, but I have 10
Mhm.
minutes. So I can just go do 10 minutes and not, I think the other side of that, and I'm hoping maybe you'll talk to me about this a little bit more too, is getting rid of the guilt with not getting the all, right? So for me,
Mhm.
I only have 10 minutes before my next appointment. I'm going to take a walk. And being satisfied in that is one thing, but
Yeah.
the person that's stuck in the all or nothing thinking goes for the 10 minutes, and maybe even if they can just do that, even if they can force themselves out of the all or nothing thinking to go do the 10 minutes, still may
Mhm.
feel some guilt for not getting in the full 30 or whatever. What have you seen or experienced there, and how would you encourage us on that front?
Yeah, so if you are like, "Oh, but it wasn't an hour," like, you're downplaying everything you've done already, you're just dismissing, it's like it's called disqualifying the positive, it's another cognitive distortion, so yeah, they're all related. So it's like, "Oh, well, I did this, but it wasn't that, so it's not enough," and that just
Right.
keeps us here, right?
Mhm.
And it makes all of our progress, it makes all of the energy we put into making any small change, it makes it meaningless. And then we set ourselves up where we are not going to be women who do the little things.
Mm.
I am a big believer that the small things matter the most. And I believe that small things have changed my whole life because you may not be the woman who's going to get an hour in every weekday,
Right.
but if you can be the woman who gets 10 minutes in no matter what, and then all the other stuff that you wanna do. However, like, if you wanted, "Okay, maybe I'll do an hour once a week and 10 minutes 4 days a week." You are
Yeah.
still the woman who's living a healthy lifestyle. You're still the woman who shows up for herself, who shows up for taking care of this body that she's supposed to love and care for, right? So you can't disqualify the positive. You can't just tell
Yeah.
yourself you're making 0 progress. You gotta look at this bar you've set and say, okay, this bar is 100%. But if I'm, it's like learning a new skill. It's like watching a kid learn how to skate or like me learning how to dribble a basketball. Like I'm not like, okay, I'm going to shoot layups or whatever they do. I don't know. I'm going to work on dribbling the basketball today. I'm here for the 10%. I'm here for the 20%. I'm here for the 30%. And that's how you grow into a healthy lifestyle. That's how you grow into it's not about the end goal. It's not about running the marathon or losing the 70 pounds. It's about being the person who shows up for the work. It's about being the person who is like, no, I'm just going to do 10 minutes today because that feels loving, because that feels like progress. It's about just recognizing yourself. So the guilt, I don't know if guilt is just going to be carried along for a bit of it, for some of it, as you start to separate your definition of what it needs to look like and just coming back and being like, I made that rule. Like, who makes the rules on what, well, people make rules on what exercise needs to look like, but who makes the rules on what exercise looks like for you in your life, in this season, in this day, in this week?
Right.
You make the rules, right?
Right. Well, and especially, I know your audience is largely moms with younger kids. I mean, my kids are getting a little older now, so I have more flexibility. I can leave the house and leave them at home.
Mhm.
But there are seasons of your life where you just don't have time to do the all, right?
Right.
Even if it's just cleaning your house, right? Like,
Yes.
no, like and I remember I used to clean the bathroom while my kids were in the tub
Yeah, yeah,
when they were little. Like I was like,
yeah,
okay, well, this is my time to clean the bathroom. Not every time they were in
totally.
the tub, but like when it got really bad, and it was like, okay,
Yeah,
that will do it. And then
yeah.
so being satisfied with just the little bits of time you have to just kind of work towards whatever goals you have. I
Mhm.
think that's really important. And then just I did a podcast a few years ago on uh what I think it was called Hush the Hustle. It was a two-parter, but I think that was the one where I talked about the tortoise and the hare story, right? And so many of, I think, my listeners are kind of more wired like me, where like we're more likely to go on the extreme, liquid diet because the results will
Hmm.
be faster, or
Yes.
where's the magic diet pill I can take, or
Hmm.
where's the unicorn is what I call it. Like we're looking for unicorns. Like someone has this magic solution that's going to fix everything and make my
Yeah.
life awesome. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's really boring for people with my personality and inclinations
Hmm.
to be told, oh, just 10 minutes a day.
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
10 minutes a day for the rest of my life. That sounds like torture, right? Like, I'd rather just go work out for 8 hours and have
Uh,
the body I want tomorrow. Can I please do
y-
that? Um,
yes.
and so anyway, just all of that ball of
Mhm.
just remembering that, yeah, it's the race is a long haul, right? And just I
Yes.
think
Yes.
those little investments of time, I was thinking, even as you're talking about exercise, just about Bible reading. I mean, how
Mhm.
many times it would be like, well, I don't have the full 15 minutes to sit down this morning because I've got an appointment in a couple minutes, and being able to be like, you
Yeah.
know what, even if I can just read the verse of the day, that's something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like we can put
Yes.
those kind of all or nothing expectations on every aspect of our life,
Mhm.
that and it's not helping us out.
Yeah,
So
it shifts us from being outcome focused, which is like what I hear you saying with like, I just want to lose the weight and be there. I
mhm,
just want to get there. I just
right,
want to have the whole Bible read. I just want to be this a certain weight. It shifts us from being outcome based to being process based.
right.
So we're here for the process. We're here for what it looks like to be someone who does this every day. And I just think like we wouldn't talk to our kids like this. Like our kid wouldn't be like, "Oh, mom, I only read one chapter. I didn't read the whole book."
Mm.
We wouldn't be like, "Well, you didn't read the whole book. Like, guess you're gonna fail," or you should have figured it out," or like, "Why even bother?" Like, we wouldn't say that to them, but we say it
Right,
to ourselves, right? We're
right,
like, "Oh, great, you read one chapter today. You can do another chapter tomorrow. Like,
right.
you're gonna get there."
Right. So in that, I hear we have a difficult time giving ourselves grace. But I also hear that maybe we've learned some of these behaviors, right? Because like,
Mm-mm.
I mean, okay, so some of us did have parents that were that hard on us, right?
Right, right. Yes, yeah.
But where does this thinking come from generally?
Mhm. It comes from most all thinking, how it evolves in us as we grow. It's just something that we have picked up over the years. We interpret the rules of the world, how we should view ourselves, how we should view ourselves in relationship to others, as we're growing up from our parents, from our teachers, from our culture, from media. That's definitely a big influence that we have. And we're taking all this information in, and our brain is memorizing all these rules we need to remember, these judgments, these assumptions, and the things we need to know that are going to keep us safe. So it's all really happening in the background, and it's happened slowly over years. And this is kind of stepping into adulthood and realizing everything I believed
Mhm.
was true, maybe it wasn't true. Like maybe
Right.
I believe things about money that aren't true, or about
Mm,
my body that aren't true, or about what motherhood should look like. Maybe I believe things that, well, not necessarily not true, but I actually feel like there's more. There's something different, right? Because
mhm.
the truth of a thought can only be tested against what the Bible says about us, right?
Right, right.
And so we just go around, and I know you had another woman speaking, Sarah, on this about how we have all these thoughts, but we
Mhm.
don't have to believe everything we think, right?
Right,
We
right.
have all of these thoughts coming into our heads. And these kinds of all or nothing thinking, where we're establishing rules on what life needs to look like, we're setting up rules because we think the rules will keep us safe.
Mhm.
They're gonna keep us safe somehow. They're either gonna make sure that we're performing to a certain level,
Right.
they're going to prevent us from being abandoned or disconnected from or rejected. So these rules keep us safe, and we cling to them
Mm.
really, really deeply. And I don't think we even notice a lot of the
Mhm.
rules that we're living by. Like I
Right.
had a rule, I thought that we shouldn't be angry. I grew up
Mm.
with this kind of mentality. Like anger is negative and you
Mhm.
don't feel it, you don't entertain it, you don't express it. And
Right.
that really got me into trouble because motherhood made me angry, like,
Mhm.
marriage made me angry, my life made me angry, but I
Yeah.
had just thought, "You don't entertain anger at all."
Yeah.
And there's a healthy side and an unhealthy side to every emotion, so I
Right.
wasn't even entertaining how I could use that
Mm.
emotion as an indicator and a response to make my life better. I know I'm going kind of over here, but
No, that's
we
good.
just developed this way of looking at our life, and neuroscientists call it the programming, like,
Mm.
the programming on our computer. We have programming in our brain. So our brain is just rolling through these thought loops that we've trained it to think, and we get really good at thinking some of them, especially these ones that feel like they're going to keep me safe.
Right.
If I can perform to this level and be this and expect this out of myself or expect this out of other people, then I'm safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like you've been eavesdropping on my coaching calls this week. Is that true, Shauna?
It is
Because
not true.
no, I mean, well, so a couple things. I don't even know where to start, but like the anger thing, I feel bad for my client that's listening to that right now. She's gonna be like, Heather told her. No, I didn't tell her. I promise.
No,
but
you
but
did not.
it's so true. Like, I mean, I very much was the same way.
Mhm,
It was never appropriate to be angry, right? And I got into counseling
mhm.
and I just remember, I mean, I'm like, this is when I like smiled all the time. People think I smile a lot now. No, no, no. I've come a long way because I used to just always have a smile on my face.
Right.
And and I'm sitting there smiling away with the counselor, and he's like, "Why are you so angry?" And I'm like, "I'm not angry." Like, what?
Yes.
Anger? Like that's weird. Like you're talking about,
Right.
and this is marriage counseling, so I'm just like, look at him. He's the one with the issues. I'm not angry. I'm smiling. See,
Yes.
and it was so, I mean, and
Mm.
it took him a while to get me to the place where I could even acknowledge how
Mhm.
angry I was. And there was anger about like things haven't worked out exactly like I thought they would. And
Yeah.
anger over, to call it shattered dreams feels so significant, right? Because I feel like there's people
Mhm.
that have had like tremendous loss. But I think even those specifics of these dreams that we have for our lives, when they don't work out exactly like we think or hope they will, it can
Yeah.
cause this sense of loss. And
Mhm.
this anger can well up in that sense of loss, right? Because we know anger is part of the stages of grief, right?
Right?
And so
Yes.
you're angry that you've lost this thing that you hoped you would have or thought
Yeah.
you would have, and
Yeah.
it's so important. And I don't remember why we started what brought anger into this. Oh, I think you were talking about just like being raised that that wasn't part of it.
Mhm.
And so I think that's such a good point. And the other thing,
Mhm.
talking about keeping us safe and how that's our brain's job. When I was
Mhm.
researching comparison for Burden of Better, I found the same thing, right? Like part of
Yeah.
the reason why we compare ourselves to others is so we will know how we're doing to figure out whether or not we're safe.
Yeah.
And then that's also kind of part of what makes comparison so dangerous, too, right? Because like our
Yes.
brains want to keep us safe, and so our brains are naturally like, how do we stay okay? How do we stay okay? Right?
Yeah.
And so that's a really solid point to remember
Mhm.
there too. I love that. Um can we go to perfectionism for a second?
Sure.
So what have you found? Because I know you work with a lot of clients, and this is kind of an area where maybe they're stuck. What have you found are some of the key things under the surface of perfectionism that
Mhm.
can kind of, I don't know, maybe be brought up to the surface in the course of getting rid of
Yes.
perfectionism?
Yeah. And I think a lot of the women that I work with, all or nothing thinking is goes in hand with perfectionism quite often, right? In how they want to keep their homes, in how they think they need to mother, in how their body should look. There's a lot of all or nothing thinking. But when they learn that perfectionism is fear-based, what would be the worst case scenario of you not being that way? What would be the worst case scenario of your house not being tidy enough? What's the worst case scenario of making a mistake as a mom or having kids that don't listen, like that's in our control, right?
Mhm.
But what's this worst case scenario for these women is that people will think I'm not doing it right.
Mm,
It's not just like there's a part of I won't think I'm doing it right. There's that inner critic, but there's also that inner critic was trained to worry what other people think.
mm,
Like that constant, it's not quite enough, you're not quite there.
mm.
You should do a little bit more. You should try harder. Like you should already be there. All of that is fear-based.
Yeah.
It's not loving.
Mm,
It's not grace-filled. It's not accepting that we're not perfect, but we are good. Like God made us and he called it good. He didn't call it perfect, right?
right.
And I know that we talked earlier and you kind of said like who decides perfect?
Mhm.
And that's just what we need to come to is you've developed this construct of what perfect looks like in how you
Right.
are raised, in how you feel like you need to perform for your value and perform for safety. And maybe it's like, I don't want people to reject me or disconnect from me or to view me as unsuccessful. Like there's lots of
Mm,
motives behind that, right?
yeah.
But knowing that they're all rooted in fear
Mm,
and they're not rooted in trust.
mhm.
Right? The opposite of fear is trust, in my opinion, for when it comes to perfectionism. How can I trust myself? How can I trust the people around me? How can I trust God? Like,
Mhm.
if I am not perfect all of the time for fear that I'm going to lose or not be enough, how can I move into trust?
Right. Right. Yeah, that's really good. I love that. Yeah, we were talking earlier. Well, just insider information here. I recorded Shawna's show, so we've been talking for like the last hour about some of this
Yeah.
stuff, and so you can catch me on her show
Yes.
sometime around the time of
Sometime.
this release.
Yeah.
Um, but we were talking about how well I was sharing about how I've kind of gradually come to like let my house be messier when people come over because
Mm.
and that was part of my perfectionism thing. But in something you just shared about fear and how people are going to respond. When I was on your show, I was talking about how I talk to women who would go out of the house for the first time without makeup on.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like what you were saying, like recognizing the worst case scenario. So they go and they face that fear. What if someone sees
Yeah.
me without makeup? And they, go to the grocery store or go someplace and no one like looks at them and screams like, "Oh, you're a hideous monster."
Yeah.
You're like, no, like people don't even notice.
Yes.
And the freedom that comes in that realizing, okay,
Mhm.
wait a second, like, I know a lot of you watching or listening today, like you might be like, "Oh, is Heather going to tell me to go without makeup?" No, not necessarily. But I'm just saying, if this is something that
Yeah.
has you paralyzed with fear, if this is an area of perfectionism where you are stuck, then maybe I do want you to try to go to the grocery store without makeup and just see what happens.
Mhm.
Because chances are nothing will happen, right?
Yeah.
And then you start to gain this freedom where it no longer has control over you. Where
Mhm.
if you are in a tight spot and you need to run out and grab something, you don't have to put on your full face first,
Yes.
right? And so there's freedom that comes with that. That's super
For
fun.
sure. Yeah.
So I love that. Well, Shauna,
Yeah.
as we wrap up today,
Mhm.
it's the Compare to Who show. Would you mind sharing with us or answering the question, has there been a struggle with comparison or even body image issues in your life that you're willing to
Mhm.
share with
When
us?
you asked this, I was like, "Oh, no," and then I was like, "That's not true."
Awesome.
So, for me, comparison, I think anyone who has sisters, and I have
Mm,
2 sisters, an older and a younger sister, I
okay.
think comparison is just inherent in looking at sibling groups
Mm,
that when you are part of a sibling group, and especially sisters and brothers, right? There starts to be this measurement of which sister is which thing.
yeah.
And so I always just viewed myself as the quiet one or the smart one because I had these sisters that were beautiful and
Mm,
fun and outgoing. So I just kind of shut down the physical part of me and
okay.
just focused on, just being what I naturally was. That's kind of
Mm,
what I put my box like myself in a box and
mm,
just kind of stayed like that. And I don't think I really challenged that until my late 20s and challenged it for me that I am so much more than that.
mm,
And so are they. Like so are
mm.
my sisters, right? There's
Yeah.
so much more than
Yeah.
being beautiful and fun. Like they are smart and sometimes they're quiet. Like
Mm,
we are all of these things. And just in motherhood, I think comparison has definitely shown itself to me. That was really And I don't know if it was being home alone and having just like this in-house event of my cell phone
Uh-huh.
and comparison being in my hand,
Uh-huh.
but I would look around and I was 20, like 26 or
Okay.
28 when I got a cell phone. Like
Mhm.
I'm of the era where you didn't have cell phones in
Right.
college or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Me either.
Right. So I'm like a mom with a cell phone and I'm on Instagram at like 28 for the first time and I'm seeing these cute homes and these cute outfits and what they're doing and they're homeschooling. And
Mhm.
that was the first time that I was like, I'm not doing all of those things.
Mm.
Oh, I should own that cute thing and I should have my oh, I need to reno. Like, let's do we have a budget? No, we don't have a budget for that. Like, and that is when I really felt comparison really deep. But
Yeah.
it took me a long time to realize that I was looking at the sum total of
Mhm.
all of these moms. I was looking at
Mhm.
what each one was doing and adding them up to
Right.
this definition of what I thought I needed to be doing at this point in my life. And that kind of comparison, when I started to pick it apart and be like, okay, maybe this mom does home cooked meals every day, but she's not like trying to be the cutest on the internet. Like
Mhm.
maybe this mom has an amazing house, but she's not like she gets take like there's just grace for all of us that we don't
Right.
have to be all of the things. And
Yeah.
when I kind of started to love my laminate countertops, like I love my pink laminate countertops because my kids can mess them up,
Mhm.
because they're there, because they're in good like I just started to see my everything that was in front of me was just so much worthwhile, and it was so worthy, but it wasn't defining my worth. Like I had
Yeah.
all of this value around me, but still mine was separate from that. So I think
Mhm.
comparison, just seeing that through the lens of motherhood, seeing that through the lens of social media, and letting myself really fall down that rabbit hole of like, oh, I need to be that good if I'm going to
Mhm.
be online. Like my Instagram is not a photo shoot. It's
Mhm.
just like me and my laundry and my kids' Legos and waffles, really.
Awesome.
Be- because that's what, to me, that's what I need my motherhood to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Shauna, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing all that. I'm sure
Yeah.
someone listening is going to be encouraged by all that. That was really great.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show
Yes.
today. Will you tell everyone where they can connect with you?
Yeah, I am at simpleonpurpose.ca. I'm in Canada. Canada. And you can find me on Instagram at simpleonpurpose.ca, the Simple on Purpose podcast, and online at simpleonpurpose.ca.
I think everyone knew you were in Canada when you said the word ABOUT. A boat?
Did I?
Yes,
Did
I love that. I
I?
love that. I wish I could talk like that and people wouldn't look at me weird. I love it. I
I
love,
don't
love,
even
love it.
hear it anymore. Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you so
Uh,
much for being on the show
oh,
again.
my pleasure, Heather.
And thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening today. I hope something on today's episode has helped you stop comparing and start living. Bye bye.